Hello, this is Benjamin Price reporting for Kids First, and today I'll be interviewing Kelsey Mann, head of story on Pixar's latest film, Onward.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So a lot of Pixar's work starts from a deeply personal place for Pixar's filmmakers. How do you preserve the integrity for the storytellers while also appealing to a broader audience?
Yeah, it's interesting. This one, you're definitely right. This is like Dan Scanlon is the director of this film, and it's definitely digs into his personal story where, his dad passed away when he was just 6 months old, and so he has no memory of his father. And he has an older brother who's 3 years older than him, and he doesn't have any memories of his father either. And so this comes from a very deeply personal space. And Dan was always so great because, it's something, it's very vulnerable to open yourself up like that to the crew,
Yeah.
And now it's out in the world and he has to do it to the entire world. And it's not an autobiography by any means,
Yeah.
And Dan wanted to really make sure that he wasn't telling like his story exactly, because he knew we had to take little like narrative left turns that may not be his experience. Like for instance, Barley. He's a lot different than Dan's brother, Bill. He's not kind of like a big slobby, like nerdy mess.
Yeah.
He's not exactly like that. But there are a lot of elements that are like Bill in Barley. So you kind of have to do what's right for the story.
So the Pixar offices to me seem like a very cool place to work. You had me at Cereal Bar, but
Yes.
what's your favorite aspect of working there, and what's one thing you think people would be surprised to find on campus?
Oh my goodness, there is. It's such a beautiful campus. Yeah, my favorite thing about working there is the people.
Yeah.
And everyone is there for the same reason, which is to make a great movie. And I would say the thing that is the most surprising, it's the thing that I'm most proud of too, is so I don't know if you've been to California Adventure. Have you? Yes. So they closed down Bugs Land. Do you remember going to Bugs Land? So they closed it down, and I'm a huge fan of the Heimlich's Choo Choo Train. Do you know that one? It's Heimlich from A Bug's Life, right? And it's a sweet little ride. There's not much to it, but it's voiced by Joe Ranft, and Joe Ranft used to work at Pixar, and he was basically the founding father of story for Pixar. He sadly passed away, but he is the voice of Heimlich, and so. It's him. And so when they were shutting that down, I worked with Disneyland, and I'm like, we have to get a Heimlich train up at Pixar.
That's awesome.
And we did.
That's crazy.
So that's my favorite thing.
Yeah.
I always walk by it, and I always smile.
Yeah. Who's one person in the animation industry you look up to?
Oh, there are so many people. One guy that I really look up to is Chris Banowski. Chris Banowski really gave me my start. He was a supervising director at Cartoon Network, and he owns his own studio now called Titmouse, and they're really successful, and they do all kinds of stuff. And he's just a really smart, energetic, creative guy. And if it wasn't for him, I don't know if I'd be sitting here talking to you.
A through line in a lot of Pixar's work seems to be the ability to make audiences cry. And Onward is no exception. Lots of tissues.
Yeah.
So do you brainstorm ways to pack an emotional punch, or do you feel it's just something that comes naturally through the way Pixar makes movies?
I think the story led to, the story that Dan wanted to tell led towards kind of this emotional ending. I remember very early on, Dan saying to me, I want to make a really fun, entertaining film that just surprises you with emotion at the end. It kind of sucker punches you with like in the emotion of it, And I thought I want to make that movie, it was. What's really interesting about this film is that we do multiple screenings, and we do about 8 screenings with a 9th screening. It's an audience preview, and the first screening to the what's in the theaters is very different.
Yeah.
But I will say we storyboarded the ending of this film on screening 1, and it has stayed the same ever since then. And that, I don't think that's ever happened to Pixar.
That final sequence it's a lot.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it was always nice to, it takes a long time to make these movies. And at times we will, like around screening 3 or 4, we kind of go through a midlife crisis and we ask ourselves, why are we making this movie?
Yeah.
And we never asked that with this movie because we always had that ending and we always knew what we wanted to say.
Can you talk a bit about the Onward storytelling process and how it stood out from other things you've worked on?
Yeah, I've worked with Dan before. We did the Monsters University together, and it was so great to see Dan because I was on him with his first film as a director, and now this is his second, and it was so great to see him. A lot like Ian, become more confident. I love watching him. He's not only a more confident director, but he's also helping a lot at the studio now. Now that we've got Pete Docter as our chief creative officer, Pete really wants to spread the kind of creative lifting at the studio, and so Dan's really stepped up and done a lot at the studio. So that's probably one of my favorite things to kind of see.
I know this might be a bit of a stretch for a movie featuring multiple pixie biker gangs and a Minotaur police officer.
Yes.
But what is the wildest idea that you will not be seeing in the final product of Onward?
Oh, my goodness. We have so many crazy scenes that were just like cut from the film. It was always such a great concept, but the scene never really worked because it didn't really do anything for Ian's like growth in his character. It just kind of flatlined a little bit. But I always like this idea. We always want to take something fantasy and mix it with something modern. And we thought, a labyrinth would be really great. And we had this idea of like, what would they do with a labyrinth now? They would probably just add stores. And so they turned the labyrinth into a mall. And so we had crazy escalators that were kind of like MC Escher. They were going all over the place. And we thought it'd be really funny if they had a Minotaur like mall cop there. And it just ended up really not doing anything for the story, but we always really liked that idea.
Paul Blart Mall Minotaur.
Yeah.
Which animated films have shaped your approach to working on them?
Have it shaped my approach of how to work them, or inspired me, or
inspired me, or just sort of changed the way you looked at. Inspired you.
Inspired me, yeah. A lot of the early Pixar films. I, just like everybody else, was such a fan of Pixar and what they did. I do vividly remember watching the credits rolling for Toy Story 2, and I thought, I have to work there. Like, I couldn't believe that they had made Toy Story and they had made Bug's Life, and they had done this sequel, which they could have just, made really quickly and not really cared about it. But it was incredible, and I thought, oh my goodness, even their sequels are like masterpieces, And I remember thinking, I want to work there. It took me a long time. I applied in 2000 and got denied. And it took me a good 9 years to finally get a job there. So, I love it.
So having worked on both Monsters University and Onward, I'm curious how you see it going if Ian and Barley from Onward and Mike and Sully from Monsters University were to embark on a quest together. Oh,
wow. I love a little crossover thing.
Yeah.
Them crossing over. Yeah. Oh, that would be fantastic. I wonder, I would love to see, there's a little bit of Sully and Barley there, a little bit. I think that would be I wonder what quest they would go on.
Yeah.
I wonder what they would go for.
Maybe something involving I don't know. You're the head of story.
Well, that's why I have a whole story team, so they can figure it out.
Well, thank you so much. Congratulations on the film. It's very good. You can check out Onward in theaters March 6th. This is Benjamin Price reporting for Kids First, signing off. See you next time. Bye.